Gentlemen, and welcome back into another edition of Keytime Sports. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Keytime Sports right here on YouTube, Key City Sports on Instagram, and the key on millions.co. Here is my media feed, and here is my profile so that everybody will know that it is me. So now let's get to the college football rankings from last night. And I was looking at the selection committee last night, and I noticed that they put they left two spots unnamed, basically just mystery teams there. And as you can see on this bracket, the number 12 team conference champ and the number 11th ranked team in these playoff brackets would be a conference champ. Now, do we know who those are? Maybe, maybe not. But one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go down a list of every team that is in this bracket and show y'all what their wins were. Now, I know I've been doing this for the last couple of weeks, but we got a couple new teams in there. Pretty much the same thing when it comes to Ohio State. They've won all their games. Pretty much, took care of business. The closest game that the Ohio State Buckeyes played this season was, this season was the first game, and that was against Texas. Now, Texas, they are one of the first teams out. So the committee, they still have a lot of decisions to make when it comes to getting Texas into the college football playoff. So Ohio State, I have no problem with them being number one. They've got the best defense, one of the best offenses, and their third and fourth down conversion rates are one of the best in college football. Now, let me get to the second team that is on this list. And this will be the Big Ten championship game on Saturday. And I'm going to be covering that game. Ohio State and Indiana. Now, I'm going to tell y'all something. Indiana, they the new kids on the block when it comes to their football team, because we always have known this team. We've always known this school to be a basketball school. So, same record. Indiana has the same record as Ohio State. Closest win they had, the closest game they had this season was against Iowa in a 2015 win. And we look at all of the other schedules. They didn't play up against good competition, but you have to blame the competition, their opponents. Like I said, Indiana, they just playing who they play on their schedule. The same as Ohio State. They can only play who they can play on their schedule. To all the teams that played against Ohio State this season and Indiana this season, those opponents, you need to be better going into next season so the games can be more respectful, because I see so many blowouts when it comes to Indiana. Kennesaw State, Indiana State, let's see, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, Purdue. And last week, Purdue, that game was over after the second quarter in a 56-3 beatdown. But now things are about to get real, because this weekend, it is championship weekend. I'm going to save all my predictions for Friday morning, because that is when the first game will start. Now, the first game is the American Athletic Conference. So I'm going to start those predictions on Friday. But now we get to the third team that is on this list. Third team to the third team through the seventh team on this list have the exact same record. When the committee thinks about Georgia Tech, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M all having an 11-1 record, they gonna look and see who had the best loss. And I know that sounds crazy, but this committee is always focused on who had the better loss when it comes to teams like this. And if I was them, I would focus on who had the better wins, who had the quality wins, and let's go from there. So the Georgia Bulldogs, first only loss of the season was against Alabama. They're playing Alabama this Saturday in the SEC championship game for a record-setting fifth time in the last 8 years. We already know that this Alabama versus Georgia, dare I say, it's almost like Ohio State and Michigan when it comes to a football NFL showcase, because most of the players that have went into the draft and got drafted by NFL teams over the last 7 to 8 years have played in this game, whether it was a regular season game, SEC championship, or national championship. I can name a few players off the top of my head. Bryce Young for Alabama. Henry Ruggs, even though that he didn't have a prosperous NFL career. You got Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. And for Georgia, you got Nolan Smith, Stetson Bennett, and the list goes on and on. But for the Georgia Bulldogs, I could see the defense, their front four has trouble. Their secondary, I've been saying this for years, their secondary has trouble. We're going to see what Alabama and Georgia do in the SEC championship game. And here's a scenario that I've been hearing over the past, I'm going to say 16 hours. They're saying if Alabama loses, do they still get in the playoff? That is a very complex question, because reason why I say that is because Alabama would be 11-2. You would have Georgia being 12-1. Now, I know that they are going to try and bring that regular season game in, but that happened at a different, like I said, that happened early in the season, week 4. Teams are different from week 4 of the college football season to early December. So when it comes to that, the committee is going to be between a rock and a hard place, no matter what team out of this game wins. Because 12-1, Alabama, then if Alabama loses, you got 12-1 Georgia. So one of these teams may not make it. I'm going to just go ahead and say that, because when you look at the current bracket prediction, you see where Georgia is number 3, and you see where Alabama is number 9. So it's not much wiggle room. If Georgia loses, worst case scenario, Georgia is number 8, number 9. If Alabama loses, they out of it, because from the projection, right now they are 9. They are. So for the Georgia Bulldogs, let's see what happens during the SEC championship game. The next team that is on this bracket prediction is Texas Tech. Now, a few weeks ago, I covered a Texas Tech game, and that game was against BYU, and that is the team that they will be facing for the Big 12 championship this weekend. Now, let's see. Texas Tech only has one loss. That was against Arizona State, an unranked Arizona State. BYU is also 11-1. Their one loss came against Texas Tech. Now we get to the point where is the previous matchup, the one that happened early in the season, was that just a fluke or was it domination by Texas Tech? Because Texas Tech's defense, the defense is not good for Texas Tech. And I believe BYU offense, it just had a bad day. I believe that. So when we get to this matchup, BYU versus Texas Tech, I'm not gonna give out my predictions. I'm just telling y'all that the bracket projection for this game, bracket, Texas Tech is number 4 right now. Would the committee put? I'm gonna just narrow it down to a few teams because I know that there are a lot of teams that are worthy of being number 11 and number 12 in the college playoff brackets. Here are the teams that could. I'm gonna just say this before I start reading everything. Here are the teams that I think that could be worthy of a playoff spot. And I'm going to go back to the rankings. Now, the first few teams that have made it that are out are Texas, Vanderbilt, Utah. Those are those 3 teams. Okay? When we get to those other teams and this is why I say maybe the conference championship game holds weight because Miami is 10-2. Now those 2 losses, it may hurt them versus SMU and Louisville. I believe those losses have probably hurt them. You get to Texas, 9-3. The 3 losses that hurt them was Ohio State, Georgia, and Florida. Now, since they lost to Florida, I wouldn't put them in the top 12. I wouldn't. And then you have Vanderbilt. Now, y'all know how I feel about Vanderbilt. You do. I just don't think that Vanderbilt would. See, this is where we got to play. When it comes to these matchups, we got to play the money game. Because everybody that is covering the college football playoffs, they have some type of investment in this game. And I do not want to be seeing Vanderbilt in the college football playoff. I just don't, because it's not going to generate much television revenue as Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Oklahoma, Alabama, Notre Dame. It's not. It's just not. Vanderbilt, they're not going to make it to the college football playoff. They'll have a bowl game. But now, let's get to these scenarios. Now, we have a lot of scenarios in this case. Now, everybody is saying James Madison. So, I'm going to start it off. I'm going to read this. I'm going to start off like this. Welcome to the party, James Madison, with the inclusion of JMU at number 25 in the selection committee's Palomit ranking. Its first appearance all season, the possibility of ACC being excluded from the playoff entirely just got real. I've been saying this. It was going to be they were going to have at least a 3-loss team in this thing. 5-loss Duke is nowhere to be found in the rankings. If Duke beats Virginia in the ACC championship game, it's not guaranteed a spot in the top 12 in the 12-team field. They don't have a guaranteed spot. It could be open. It could open the door for 2 Group of 5 conference champions to compete for a national title. And if the playoff were today, it would be Tulane out of the American Conference and JMU from the Sun Belt Conference. The ACC best team, Miami, is still on the outside looking in. At number 12, the Hurricanes still need some help, but Alabama increased its chances of earning a spot in the SEC. Runner up with a small promotion to number 9, the can conference champion games can still alter the picture, but hope on the bubble is dwindling. Bubble watch accounts for what we have from the committee so far and historical knowledge and of what it means for teams clinging to hope. Teams with would be in status below are looking good after the committee's fifth ranking for each Power Four conference. We've also listed teams that are still in the mix. Teams that are out will have to wait until next year. The conferences below are the latest are the list in order of the number of bids that would receive, ranked from the most to the least based on the committee's latest ranking. Y'all see the committee's latest ranking. Now let's get to all of these scenarios. SEC, teams that would be in, right? Teams that would be in: Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Right now, the Crimson Tide are the last SEC at-large team in the field. Alabama will face Georgia in the SEC championship game, but the committee could have the first difficult decision that committee will have to make. If Alabama loses and finishes as a 3-loss runner-up, the Tide would have defeated Georgia during the regular season, but lost to the Bulldogs in the championship game, even moving up a spot to 9 this week ahead of Notre Dame. It still seems as if they have little more margin for error, but how the SEC title game unfolds could matter, and how far Alabama drops could determine if the SEC gets 4 or 5 teams in the field. Alabama could finish as the committee's highest ranked 3-loss team and still could be excluded from the playoff to make room for a conference champion as they were last year. A Georgia win, all you Georgia fans out there, listen, a Georgia win would a Georgia win should lock up a first round bye and a top 4 finish for the Bulldogs, while a loss still puts them in position to host a first round game. Georgia beat Ole Miss, so it wouldn't be surprising to see the Bulldogs drop below the Rebels with a loss, even though the Bulldogs would have one more defeat with a 35-10 drubbing of Texas also on its resume. Georgia would still have a strong case to finish as the committee's top 2-loss team. Now, let me get to number 6. At number 6, the selection committee moved the Rebels up 1 spot, so clearly the departure of Coach Lane Kiffin to LSU doesn't hurt Ole Miss or its chances of hosting a first-round home game. The bigger the reasoning was a promotion after winning the Egg Bowl, combined with Texas A&M losing to Texas. Now, these are the teams that are still in the mix. We only got one for SEC championship. Still in the mix, Texas. The Longhorns moved up to 13, but the win against Texas A&M wasn't enough to put them in the field after the 5th ranking. Texas is stuck behind Miami, part of because of its loss to Florida. I just said that a few minutes ago, which Miami beat. Even if BYU and Alabama were knocked out of those title games without title game losses, that still probably wouldn't be enough for Texas to get into the field because the bracket has to make room for conference champions. The teams that are out in the SEC are Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. For the Big Ten, let's fast forward to the Big Ten. Big Ten, Teams that are in it would be in Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. Both Indiana and Ohio State are CFP locks. Even if they lose in the conference title game, and the runner up would still have a strong case for a top four finish and a first round bye. The loser only loss would be a top two team. It but it could fall behind Georgia in the top four if the Bulldogs win the SEC and or Texas Tech if it wins the Big 12. The Ducks punctuated their resume with a respectable win at Washington and should should be secure in their playoff positioning, probably hosting a first round game. Oregon received a small boost at number 5 after Texas A&M lost to Texas. Teams that are still in the mix, none. Everybody is out. Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, UCLA, USC, Washington, and Wisconsin are out in the Big Ten. Let's fast forward to the Big 12. Teams that would be in, Texas Tech would be in. The Red Raiders will play BYU in the Big 12 title game and have a great case of being in the playoff regardless of the outcome. It's highly unlikely that the selection committee would drop the Red Raiders out of the field as a two-loss Big 12 runner-up, especially considering they would have a regular season win against the eventual conference champion. That's if BYU wins this Saturday. It's also possible Texas Tech earns a first round bye as a top 4 seed if the Red Raiders win the Big 12. The committee moved them up into the top 4 Tuesday night following Texas A&M's loss during rivalry week. Teams that are still in the mix in the Big 12. BYU is still in the mix. If BYU doesn't win the Big 12, it's unlikely to earn at large a bid as the conference runner-up because the Cougars are already on the bubble and would be eliminated during the seeding process if the playoffs were to date. It's not impossible, though, if Alabama finishes as a 3-loss SEC runner-up, it could at least open the door for debate. BYU would have lost to Texas Tech twice, and Alabama would have defeated Georgia, the eventual SEC champ, once, and it was on the road. If BYU wins the Big 12, it's the ideal scenario for the conference because it would have 2 teams in the playoff. Teams that are out for the Big 12 are Arizona State, Baylor, Cincinnati, Colorado, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, UCF, Utah, West Virginia. So that is the Big 12. Let's fast forward to the ACC. Teams that would be in for the ACC, that is to be determined. The ACC championship will feature Virginia and Duke. And if 5-loss Duke wins, it's possible the ACC is excluded from the playoffs since Duke is not a part of the college football playoff rankings. If Virginia wins, it will represent the league in the playoff, and the 2-loss Cavaliers are ranked in the top 20. And no, Miami did not play Duke or Virginia during the regular season. Duke lost to Tulane, which is the top group of 5 playoff contender, and will reach the playoff if it wins the American. Duke also lost to UConn, and it has already lost to Virginia 34-17 on November 15th, which was last month. Still in the mix, the Miami Hurricanes. I've been saying this over the last couple of weeks, America, that the Miami Hurricanes, those two losses are going to hurt the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I did hear what Michael Irvin said about the Miami Hurricanes. He made he made a good case for the Miami Hurricanes because they had a dominant win versus Pittsburgh. They did. The Canes are still the committee's highest ranked ACC team, but they would be excluded if the playoff were today. To make room for a conference champion, that means the ACC winner could knock the league's best out of the playoff. The committee isn't ignoring Miami's head-to-head win versus Notre Dame. Oh, they not? Well, they said I've been saying this. No, the college football committee said last week that the game Notre Dame and Miami, it didn't matter as much. Y'all see what the committee is saying now? They switching it. Y'all listen to the committee now. The committee isn't ignoring Miami's head-to-head win versus Notre Dame. But it's also isn't comparing the Canes only to the Irish. Okay, so who are you comparing them to? Miami also needs to earn an edge against BYU, which the committee has deemed better than Miami to this point. Okay, hold on. So I'm gonna break it down for y'all. So what the committee is saying, BYU has a more respectable record than Miami. But Miami has the better, I'm going to say, as far as, revenue standpoint, money standpoint, I wouldn't mind seeing Miami in the playoff. I wouldn't mind. BYU, that's the team that's iffy. Because the team that they lost to is the team that they playing this weekend. So now let's see. Miami inched closer to Notre Dame because Bama moved up Tuesday. But with neither team playing in a conference championship game, would the committee flip them on selection day with the BYU loss? So many scenarios that don't make sense when it comes to the Miami Hurricanes. We're going to have to wait until selection day for the Miami Hurricanes in order to get a playoff seeding, or they could just fall out of the rankings and just have a bowl game. But the teams that are out in the ACC are Boston College, Cal, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, North Carolina, NC State, Pitt, SMU, Stanford, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. Let's get to the independent. Independent, Notre Dame would be in because they are the independent. The Irish have done everything right after starting off the season 0-2. They have ran the table, doing it consistently with dominance regardless of opponent. At number 10, Notre Dame is in a precarious position and situation. If BYU wins the Big 12 and enters the field, that could bump the Irish out, could bump out the Irish. If BYU wins the Big 12, both BYU and Texas Tech are highly likely to make the playoff, which means someone currently in the top 10 would have to be excluded. Good group of five would be in. These are the group of five teams that would be in. Tulane. If the Green Wave win the American, they will represent the group of five in the playoff. Tulane is currently the highest ranked group of five team. But if Texas beats Tulane on Friday, the Mean Green would be the most likely team to reach the CFP, given overall strength of the American Conference this season. Now, the game on Friday, North Texas and Tulane, I will be covering that game. The teams that are still in the mix are James Madison and North Texas. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody is saying, who the hell is North Texas? North Texas has an 11-1 record, has clinched the East Division and a spot in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, where it will face Troy on Friday. North Texas will face Tulane in the American. And if it wins, it's more likely to represent the group of five in the playoff than JMU because of its schedule, strength of schedule. JMU could still be considered, though, if Duke wins the ACC, given the group of five, two playoff teams in the 12-team playoff, in the 12-team field, with JMU earning a spot in the top 25 this week. This situation became more probable. Bracket. Here are the brackets. Based on the committee's fifth ranking, the seeding would be first round byes. Currently, Ohio State would get a first round bye. Indiana would get a first round bye. Georgia would get a first round bye. Texas Tech would get a first round bye. First round games on campus would be Tulane versus Oregon, Virginia at Ole Miss, Notre Dame at Texas A&M, number 9 Alabama at number 8 Oklahoma. Quarterfinal games. This is what the scenario would be if it were to fall in place like this. Tulane would be facing the winner of Texas Tech would be facing the winner of Tulane and Oregon. Georgia would be facing the winner of Virginia, Ole Miss. Indiana would be facing the winner of Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. And Ohio State would be facing the winner of Alabama versus Oklahoma. Now, that is all the scenarios that I have, and those are my reactions to the latest college football playoff bracket projection. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Keytime Sports. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Key City Sports, and go and follow my profile on millions.co. Here is my profile, the key, and here is my media feed. Here is my media feed. So everybody knows what I do, and you will never, and I do mean never, be uninformed when it comes to me giving great sports content. Now, one last thing, everybody. Remember, and I want everybody to remember this. Remember, the key is always accurate, and the key is always on time.